Hi, this is Joseph Arthur. Thanks for checking out Come to Where I'm From. Please support us on Patreon, patreon.com/come to where I'm from. We are an independent podcast, and any contributions you can make are greatly appreciated. How's it going? Andrea Gibson.
It's going good. How are you?
I'm good. I just took a nap.
Did you really?
Yeah, I fell asleep on the couch over there.
It's a good place. There's lots of sun.
Did yoga.
You did yoga in your nap?
No, before. And then came here.
It leaves you in a sleepy place, yoga.
Yeah, it did this time. Yeah.
What kind of yoga do you do?
Hot yoga. Moto. Do you do that?
No, but my partner teaches hot yoga.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And you don't do it still?
You know, I get panicky in rooms with other people.
Yeah, I was just listening to your poem about panic attacks.
Yeah, the last time I did yoga, I had a panic attack in the yoga room. And then also with the heat, I feel like an elephant is sitting on top of me.
Yeah. Are you coming from New Orleans? I mean, I know you don't live there now, but is that where you grew up? Or it says you lived there for a time.
Yeah, I think that's because the woman I was dating when I lived in New Orleans wrote my bio for me.
So she did that.
Yeah, I grew up in northern Maine, a really working class little town in the woods in northern Maine, and then I moved to New Orleans after college.
Oh, okay. How long were you in New Orleans for?
About 1.5 years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, not long.
Not long. So it's odd that it factors in to the bio a little.
Yeah, it is. I think it's because I moved from there to Colorado where I started poetry.
That's where you started writing? You never started before, or did you write when you were a kid?
I did write when I was a kid, and I wrote through school, but I never got on a mic to read. I had too much stage fright, and so Colorado was the first place I ever read a poem on a microphone.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where in New Orleans did you live?
I lived in Lakeview at the time. It was a lot different. We lived in her grandparents' house. Well, they had passed away at that point, but they had this little tiny house, and it was one of the places sort of most wiped out by Katrina. So all those houses are gone now, and big ones built in their place.
What year was that?
We were there around 99.
99.
Yeah.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time there early 2000s.
What were you doing there?
Making records.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Good place to do that.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Great. Totally different energy than any place else.
It doesn't feel like the U.S. at all.
No.
It feels like you just go there to live, you know? People, I don't know, everywhere else I've lived, everybody is living in the future somehow, and it seems like people are present.
Yeah.
Without meditating.
Right. Yeah, it's not a huge namaste culture.
No, it wasn't, at least when I was there, for sure.
Right. That's another funny line in the Panic poem
about
not tattooing namaste under the right windpipe or something like that.
Yeah, I don't remember.
You don't remember?
No. I think I wrote that poem in a panic.
Do you often have panic attacks, or is that an anomaly?
That would be so sweet if it was. No, you know, I just recently learned the difference between anxiety attacks and panic attacks. So I'd had anxiety attacks throughout my life, but it was a full throttle panic attack started about 3 years ago for me.
Right.
And they got so debilitating I couldn't do anything at all. And then I had sort of a transformative experience about 1 year ago. I could tell you about it if you want.
Ayahuasca?
No, it wasn't ayahuasca, actually. I was too afraid to do ayahuasca for years because of my anxiety. I thought that I would just lose my mind.
Right.
But what I did is I was actually listening to Eckhart Tolle a lot during the panic attacks. Like, really, it was Eckhart and I about 8 hours a day just trying to survive. And I got really into the idea of saying yes to anything that would come up that would be hard. So this one panic attack I had, I just welcomed it as much as I could. I just kept saying yes to it. It was almost like it turned inside out. And it's hard to explain really, but from the middle of the terror, I suddenly entered this like state of bliss, and it lasted for about 6 weeks. I never felt anything like it. I still get them, but I know it's not the same anymore ever since that experience.
So just accepting it totally.
Not even accepting.
Inviting
accepting it. Yeah, but almost to the extreme level of welcoming.
Right.
Yeah.
And what do you think causes the panic attacks? Have you discussed it with your therapist and all that?
Yeah. It's hard to say. A combo of things. I have chronic Lyme disease, so that causes a lot of the anxiety and depression in my body, but it also is trauma and stuff, just a lot of things colliding, and then, yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Have you ever had a panic attack?
I don't think so.
No.
I guess I would know if I had.
It's like an orgasm, so there's no,
There's no middle ground.
You just know if you've had one. Yeah.
It's just like you think you're dying, basically.
You really do. The only way I can think to describe it is it wouldn't be a different sensation in my body than if I were on a plane and the plane was going down. It's the exact same thing, except nothing actually terrifying is happening,
right,
or life-threatening.
Yeah. I like Eckhart Tolle because he like teaches you to sort of just pay attention to awareness.
Yeah.
Or like, the awareness of awareness.
Yeah. I love him. I call him my boyfriend.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. All my friends know him as my boyfriend.
Have you ever met him?
I haven't, no.
No.
I don't meet any of my boyfriends.
Have you ever thought about writing... You don't meet any of them? Once you meet them, they stop being your boyfriend?
Yeah.
Those are the best kinds of boyfriends.
They really
are. Did you ever think about writing a book of poetry that was sort of designed to help people, like in that same wavelength as Eckhart Tolle, like enlightened sort of advice poetry?
Like new age spoken word, which basically there's virtually none of that, I don't think, out there. So I could start a new genre of that for sure. No, I've not thought about, actually one of my best friends, and I guess it has already been done, but one of my best friends is a poet named Buddy Wakefield, and he actually writes a lot about Eckhart Tolle.
Oh, he actually writes specifically about Eckhart? His
teachings and the idea of presence and just being with whatever is coming up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you practice any kind of like spiritual practice? Like you said you don't do the yoga or anything like that, but do you like meditate or like do things along those lines?
Yeah, all of those things. So I actually do yoga. I just don't do it in rooms with other people.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Yeah, constantly. It's sort of a survival technique for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And being on the road.
You have to.
You have to.
You lose your mind.
How do you prepare for your shows?
I do a lot of just presencing, and I guess other people would call it prayer.
Yeah. Presencing is what you call it?
Presencing, and then also, I guess people would call it prayer, but I connect with higher spirits and my ancestors and stuff like that constantly throughout the day. I probably pray 50 times a day.
Yeah, I pray a lot too. Maybe not that much, but I ask people that question all the time if they pray, and have a hard time understanding how people don't pray.
Yeah.
Not because of any sort of moral superiority of I pray or something, but more just the opposite in a way. Like it's I need that security blanket.
Yeah, to know that you're not alone, and that even connecting with the brightest, highest version of yourself. These folks they're
going off.
They're praying over there. They are praying with some margaritas.
A little bit.
Oh my God. We've never, this is so.
It's the first time for everything.
It's the first time for everything, yeah. What did your folks do?
About praying?
No, just like I'm trying to figure out like how you were how you came to be who you are. Like
my dad was a mailman, and my mom a secretary and a bank teller.
Right.
And yeah, it was a really working class family. They just, they had a sweet little
Sweet little
life.
life.
Yeah, yeah.
They had brothers and sisters.
Tons.
Oh,
So many.
really?
So many. Yeah. Giant
how
family.
many?
We took up almost the whole town.
You did?
Yeah, I'm lucky I didn't marry somebody I'm related to. You know,
probably
so
did.
I'm not married, so I know I didn't.
Okay, spiritually.
Yeah.
What? How many brothers and sisters?
I got one sister.
Oh, I
Yeah.
thought you said tons.
Oh no, tons on my parents. So hundreds of cousins and uncles and all
I
of that.
see.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
But not my family, just me and my sister.
yeah.
And she was a mistake.
Oh, your sister was?
Yeah.
Do you get on with her?
Yeah, I do. But we're 10 years apart. So it was sort of like I had a more parental relationship with her.
Oh, she's younger.
She was little.
Yeah.
And so I never had an opportunity to not love her the way most siblings go,
Right.
None of that sort of angst. I had to love her from the very beginning.
Right. It wasn't the competitive thing.
No. And we had nothing in common. So,
That's cool.
yeah.
And how are they? Are they still together, your folks?
They are, yeah.
Are they proud of all the books and stuff you've written and what you're doing and achieving with your life?
Yeah, yeah, I think so. It's been a growing process for my whole family. It was a really conservative family, so it was really difficult, for example, for me to come out years ago,
Right.
and it was a real challenge for my family at first. There was nobody. My family had never heard of queer. It just wasn't in their world. They knew of Ellen DeGeneres,
Right.
but there was not much more. So it's sort of been a family, a learning process, and it's actually been really sweet to watch the process of their growing and changing and learning along with me.
Like how? What's been sweet about it? Like, what's the sweet side of it? The willingness to adapt.
Yeah, I mean, when I came out, it was a hard time. I was going to a Catholic university, and nobody in my whole school was. I don't even want to say they weren't out. They weren't. There were no queer people there. It was a very conservative school. Like teachers were monks and nuns, and yeah, and that transition time was really hard. We weren't talking much, and then. Yeah, this last holiday was one of the most special of my life because my partner came home with me and they were just really welcoming to her, really tender, and that took some time.
That's amazing. So that just happened the first holiday with your partner and your folks and everything?
That holiday just happened, yeah. There were years prior to that where it was getting easier and easier, but this last one felt like the first real, like, here we all are as a family and doing this thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah, it was really nice.
Yeah. So you went through a period of estrangement from them though for a while?
Just where we couldn't really talk without disagreeing, and just our
okay.
hearts sort of closed off to each other. Yeah.
Yeah, that's tough.
It was.
I've gone through things like that with my family of origin.
Yeah, I think that many people have,
Yeah.
For lots of different reasons. And it's one of my favorite things to see in life is watching folks change for the better in the direction of opening your heart further. I've had just as much learning to do as my parents have, and so my route has been different, but I had as much to learn as them.
In what way?
I mean, every way, just how I interact with people, prioritizing kindness, open-heartedness. There's a lot of my life I think that I was actually shut down, almost like there was a wall in front of my heart, and just a lot of therapy trying to figure out how to tear that wall down.
Yeah. Was it hard to find a therapist?
No, I live in Boulder, Colorado. There's nobody there who isn't a therapist.
Right. But it's hard to find a good one, though, isn't it?
My therapist is amazing.
You got a good one.
Yeah, she's so good. I've been seeing her for so many years. And I was posting about it actually on social media last year, and somebody made a comment saying, if you've been seeing a therapist for 14 years, that's a bad therapist. And you just don't know how messed up I am. I'd be dead if I wasn't seeing her. And she's just amazing because she incorporates all this other stuff that I'm interested in, like, being with my body and breath and, yeah.
Pranayama breathing type of stuff? Or
No, not that kind of breathing, just regular basic breathing.
And focusing on it? Yeah,
and just being with it and not following the story in my head, She talks a lot about the unarguable. I can never say the word unarguable.
Inarguable?
Yeah, inarguable truth. Yeah, and so speaking from that place.
Being with the inarguable truth.
Yeah.
And what is that?
Well,
what is
say
the
you're
inarguable truth?
Okay, so for example, if you just said something I thought was cruddy, instead of saying you're a jerk or you just said something that was stupid, I would say, wow, when you say that, I feel like my brain is going to explode. My face is turning bright red, and I want to storm out of this room right now.
Have I said anything like that so far?
No, not yet.
Okay, good.
Not yet.
I hope I don't. I'm trying not to.
You probably won't. You've come right from yoga,
Yeah, but that doesn't mean anything. I need yoga the way you need therapy. I mean, that's just getting me at ground zero.
Yeah, no, I get that.
I started a deficit, and then
You gotta work your way up.
And then I crawl and claw just to get to ground zero.
No, I think that's most of
heroically.
us, But the key is knowing that you know that.
I do know that.
It's everything.
It's all about getting your state of mind into an adequate place.
Yeah.
I find.
Yeah.
And no time is better where that's more obvious than when you're on the road, I think.
That's
because
true.
you have to present yourself tonight again.
Mm-hmm.
Do you how does that feel like to you? Are you like psyched about it? Are you comfortable? Do you get nervous? Like a lot of times before a show I'll think like, how can I do that again? I can't do it again.
I don't know that I think that I can't do it. I know that I've never met anybody in all my years of touring that I feel like has more stage fright than me. I've never had.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I've seen so many natural performers. My partner actually does the same thing that I do, and she just thrives. Like it's her whole being just wants to be up there. I'm more introverted and shy. It's not natural for me to be on stage, but it's
whether it's poetry or music, it doesn't matter. You still have the same stage fright.
Yeah. I get really scared. But I heard once, it might have been Obama actually. Somebody said the amount of nerves you have for a situation is equal to the amount of respect you have for it. So when the butterflies are going crazy in my stomach, I tell myself they're respect butterflies, and it's something like that.
Right. How long's your tour right now that you're on?
We're down the East Coast for a couple more weeks, but then we head out to the West Coast in April, and then we go overseas in May.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And how often are you on the road?
So much.
So much.
Yeah, all the time.
I can't believe how many books you have and merch and
yeah,
stuff. That merch scene is intense.
It's wild, huh?
Yeah.
I've just been writing for so long. And they won't let me just bring my most recent book, so we just bring it all. It's obnoxious. The last tour we had a U-Haul just to lug all the books, which I loved because U-Haul is, y'all might not know, but so gay. U-Haul, I feel like U-Haul should sponsor me. It's like the gayest thing in the world.
Why are they gay?
Do you not know this?
No, I didn't know.
Are you serious?
I thought U-Haul was mob run. That's what I know about U-Haul.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
it's the gay
mob.
mafia.
Yeah, I guess so.
Wow.
I didn't know it was gay.
Wow. No, U-Haul is gay. It's the joke. So it's like, queer women especially, you date for, 6 or 7 days, and then you get a U-Haul and move into each other's houses.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Is that how that goes?
That's how it's gone for me so far.
Right.
Yeah.
How long have you been with your partner now?
4 years.
So that worked out.
Yeah, it did. I moved her right in and she stayed.
And you guys hit the road together and everything like that?
Yeah, she's on the road with me a lot.
Does she open up for you, or?
She does some shows, and then for this one, she's doing a couple pieces with me, but then she also does her own tours and stuff.
So what's your writing schedule like? Do you do that on a daily basis, or is it when inspiration comes? Is it in the morning? Do you do morning pages, any of that kind of stuff? Like,
yeah, so I can never write on the road. It's really sad because whenever I go on tour, I know nothing's gonna come out of me. But at home, I write. I wake up, and some days I'll be writing for 10 hours straight. It's just as long as I stay inspired to do it. But it's so many hours. Mostly because I write so slow, and sometimes I'll just sit there and argue with one line for 3 hours.
oh, really? So it's not like a flow state thing. It's more just like line by line, or sometimes it's flow state, or what?
So I do most of my writing out loud, pacing around the room, and but then when I land on something that feels right, I'll debate its perfection for hours.
Oh, okay. So you're writing for the vehicle of performance in a way.
Yeah, I always write to hear something out loud. Like how it lives out loud is most important to me. So I'll put a word in that might not be as beautiful on the page if I think it's going to sound better out loud.
That's interesting. Who are your favorite poets?
My favorite poet died recently. Mary Oliver was the first poet I really fell in love with on my own outside of school, of people telling me, who to love. But I love a lot of spoken word artists, actually. Like people, Maya Angelou actually said that an unspoken poem is a half-written poem. I love hearing poets out loud, like the words live out loud. So a lot of my favorite poets, I could go forever. Want me to name some?
Yeah.
Yeah. One of my favorite poets is a poet named Ciara Freeman. Another one is Denez Smith. I just mentioned Buddy Wakefield earlier. There's just so many. I'll just say those three for now.
What do you look for? What strikes you about a poem? What makes you rate a poem, or what moves you about a poem? What do you think the ingredients are?
I think mostly for me is if it just if it feels unimpressive, but it reaches me emotionally. If it feels ordinary and is something that anyone could think, oh, I could write that, and it just touches me. So nothing fancy, just things that I know would hit me, my sister, my mom, like in the same way, a construction work. Yeah.
And unimpressive. So if it doesn't seem like it's trying too hard, I guess.
Yeah. It just my favorite art is when something sounds familiar, but you've never heard it before. It feels familiar.
Yeah.
Is your stuff fictional or like, because I was listening to you reading Proof of Life, I think it was.
Living Proof.
Living Proof. Is that a true story? I mean, that moved me, like, it was intense.
So that's really interesting that you say that, because I have such, so all of it, everything I write about is mostly my life's experience. And that story is... I don't like the way it was written because I feel like it resonates like it could be a metaphor, and it isn't. It actually happened.
I thought it was.
And I always have to give that disclaimer when I read it. I know that it's going to sound to people completely unbelievable, but it actually happened. I could tell you the story about what the poem is about if you want to.
Yeah, or could you read it?
Oh, no, I don't have it memorized right now because this show that I'm doing is an entirely different one. But essentially, it's it was one of the lowest days of my life, and I've struggled with mental health, mental illness, suicidality throughout my life, and it has been particularly active when I'm sick. So I have chronic Lyme disease,
right?
And whenever I go through long periods of time where my health is really, really awful. I just get to this place of, I struggle to not get to this place of absolute hopelessness. So that day I was rock bottom and ready to go. And I knew where I was going and my life was going to be done. And I was driving down a road in Colorado. And as I was driving to where I was going.
Where were you going?
Oh, you know what? I don't like to give the details of that because I don't want to put ideas in people's minds. But
I see what you're saying.
But I looked up from the steering wheel and there was a man on the outs of the what is it called?
Bridge overpass.
Yeah, overpass, and he was about to jump, and I was the last car to pass right before all the fire trucks and emergency vehicles got there to try to talk him down, and it was just so surreal. I pulled over. I'm on the back of the overpass for a half an hour, not being able to see what was, if he was still, going to jump. But they were all there looking up, and it was this half hour of my life where I was just, if this man doesn't jump, this is not going to be part of my future anymore. And he didn't. He came down at, I think it was exactly 12:31 and yeah, by that point I had called my friend. My friends were there, and it was really, it shook me to feel somebody else feeling the same thing
at the same time,
and how badly I wanted this dude to live, and then trippy to want somebody to live, and then while not wanting to live, and all of that. So the piece is about that, but it resonates like a metaphor because it's so serendipitous that it feels almost unbelievable.
Right.
I thought it was a true story. That's why I asked. And
yeah, it
your
is.
Delivery, it didn't seem like there were any metaphors in there.
Yeah, I know. It just
so
seemed
intense.
so, yeah, it was. It was. And it was also beautiful. I think about him almost every day. I don't know who he was. They did some stuff later on. I read about it in the news, but his name wasn't there or anything. So,
do you think that was like divine intervention? Or?
Yeah, I always think I think serendipity is almost always God, or whatever that means. Speaking, and I felt that for sure.
That's intense. And then how come you decided, well, if he doesn't jump, this is not going to be a part of my life anymore? What was it that turned that key permanently in that situation? It was just an agreement you made, maybe? Or?
I don't know if I even have language for it. I just, I've been comforted a lot by the idea that, we're all connected, that other people feel this too. The idea that whatever you're feeling, somebody else feels too. But I had always known it conceptually, and I never fully understood it so viscerally, my own experience and my own body. And there was just this new knowing and a new aliveness and a new tenderness with, I guess, the whole human experience. And I didn't feel alone, and I felt like he was going to keep going, and I hope he has, and me too.
That's what I love about 12-step rooms is, regardless of people have issues with that or whatever, but it's the same thing, whereas people are expressing their difficulties in the process of living.
Yeah.
And everybody is.
Yeah.
And that's the spirit comes into the room with that.
I mean, because that kind of transparency and vulnerability around your own human experience is just welcoming to so much light. It's almost like my therapist says that shame can't live in the light. It can only live in the darkness. And so
shame is the closest thing to death.
Yeah.
I heard you say in another interview.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, no, keep going with that, though. I didn't mean to cut you off with the shame thing.
No, I just think that it's something, and that's one of the things, social media and everything, I think, is almost creating a culture of being what we're not. There's this plasticness in a lot of it, I think, about trying to show, everything in this perfection. And I even catch myself doing it too.
Well, you can't help it. You don't want to show people like you crying on a couch. It's
Yeah.
like, because then the reaction is like, oh no, are you okay? And you don't want that,
Yeah.
So it's like, in a way, it's set up to make us accentuate the positive vibes of our life more.
I mean, maybe that's good in some ways. Like the idea that, the only thing, I'm quoting my therapist all through this thing, but
you
she
do
said,
that a lot.
I do. And in the
You
show
love your
that I'm doing,
therapist.
my gosh, I talk about it as a joke throughout the show. And it's funny that it's so
She'll give you
naturally
a
coming
discount.
out right now. Yeah.
Yeah, she definitely needs to give you a discount.
But the only thing that we have control over in our lives is where we put our attention. So maybe
Right.
maybe it does help that social media is actually helping us be like, oh, and look at this, if we're really feeling into it. But I think in places, it just becomes refreshing to people to be places where you can be honest about the darkness and what is just the what feels so consistently impossible in our lives, and everybody is living through things that feel impossible to live through, and we're living through them, and we're not, we're not sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes we're not. How healing do you think poetry has been for you? The process of writing what you've written and all that.
Well, I shake so much when I do it. I heard this thing so many years ago that animals in the wild, when they escape a predator, they will actually stand in one place and shake for 10 or 15 minutes to get rid of the trauma of the chase.
Or the adrenaline. Maybe.
Yeah, but it's also they don't carry that fear story afterwards. And humans, we've evolved out of that. If that doesn't sound like the right word, but we've evolved out of being able to actually do that. Sometimes you can do it, but sometimes when I take the stage and I'm shaking like that, I think of that animal thing, and I'm like, I'm shaking off this, whatever trauma of the culture, trauma of my life. But for me, just being able to get up and speak the truth of my experience, I find really healing. And I also find it really healing being in the room witnessing somebody else doing it.
Yeah, and how gratifying is it when people come up to you and say that you've helped them through your work?
It just feels, how gratifying is it? It always just makes my heart turn to mush, and it feels like a real communal experience. Like this, performing in this venue is actually really sweet, because a lot of the shows are in, bigger rooms where everybody's standing up and they can't really settle into. This whole tour is in small seated venues, and it feels almost like how it's supposed to be, like intimate, and I can see everybody's face. And that's what I love about spoken word. It's a conversation. It always feels like a conversation to me, and I'm getting so much from people, and they're giving so much, and it just feels like community.
How close is it, do you think, to stand-up comedy?
I mean, sometimes not at all. Sometimes it's just so heavy, and sometimes it's close. This show that I've been doing lately, I keep shocking myself with how freaking funny I am. I'm just hilarious.
Well, that's what I mean, because you gotta work with the crowd.
You do.
And then I'm sure a lot of improvisation comes up and crowd work, so to speak.
Yeah, and that's the best part of the show,
Yeah.
the parts that aren't memorized, and just being with what's happening right then, Yeah. But stand-up, I mean, I think stand-up comedians are probably better than me at being heckled or something. Sometimes I'm good at that, and sometimes I just stand there and stare.
Do you get heckled at spoken words?
No, not very often. I mean, sometimes it's more aggressive than
a subject that somebody disagrees
You
on?
know, like I've had
Political stuff. Maybe somebody shouts out.
Yeah, sometimes. I mean, I've had a dude run down the center aisle of the show and screaming faggot, you know, that
Really?
sort of stuff. So that's not even heckling. That's just like,
that's just hate.
yeah, that's just meanie
somebody
pants.
with nothing to do.
That's literally just like psychotic.
At least
hate.
he bought
Yeah.
a ticket, you know.
Yeah.
At least you got
At
some money
least he
for
bought
it.
a ticket.
Yeah.
Come on.
No, I
that
know,
was somebody
really.
that probably
Oh
set
my
out to do
God.
that and bought the ticket and was like, I'm going to do that. And that's the only reason they were there.
You know, I never even considered that. I
So
love
at
knowing
least-
a
at
ticket
least-
was bought.
At least the ticket was bought, you know?
Pay me to holler mean things at me.
I don't know. I don't think it's worth it.
No. No, it isn't.
No.
But you are very political, so I'm assuming there are some people who come to your shows know what to expect, kind of, or sometimes you find that people like walk out in the middle.
Sometimes they do. You know, I used to get invited to a lot of, you know, Catholic universities and stuff. People have walked out of those kind of shows at Catholic universities sometimes because of my humor.
Why would they invite you to a Catholic university if they were going to be offended? Or
Really, I know. Yeah.
or did they not know what you were about?
I think, you know, maybe they just didn't listen to everything.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I got, one time I had a contract for a show at a Catholic university, and there was a clause at the bottom that said, Andrea will agree to say nothing during the performance that disagrees with the beliefs of the Catholic Church. And I actually had to call the host and ask how that was possible if I were to do my own set. And he was like, no, we have listened to you on YouTube, and you didn't say, you're not saying anything that disagrees with the beliefs of the Catholic Church. And then I seriously had to question my whole career.
Send me those links
Yeah.
so I can see
I'm
what
like,
you're
what am I
talking
not
about.
putting up on YouTube?
Did you sign it? No.
No, I did, and I went.
Oh, you did sign it.
Yep, I did. And I read all the stuff. If he thought that I didn't, that I wasn't going to say anything, and I just read all the same stuff, and there wasn't an issue. A few students walked out of that one, but the staff didn't.
So when you wrote your first book, how did you get it published, and how thrilling was it when you got it published?
Oh, that was, you know, I had a nervous breakdown. I was so, because I never wrote for the page before. You know, most of the poems I
You
had.
were straight up a performer the whole time.
Yeah, like most of the poems I didn't even have on, you know, say, I don't even know if I had a computer then, but they were just in my head. And so trying to figure out how to even put them on a page was really difficult for me.
Like line breaks and all that?
Yeah, I knew nothing about that. I knew nothing about that and didn't know enough to have somebody else help me through it. Yeah.
Right. So who offered to publish your first book?
It was Right Bloody Publishing who did my first 4 books. And the publisher is a guy named Derek Brown, who's one of my favorite poets. And
I know Derek Brown.
you do?
Yeah, he's friends with, he's a New Orleans guy, right? Or no?
No.
But he's friends with Greg Dooley.
He was just opening up for Cold War kids.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've met him before.
Yeah, he's a great
I feel like
guy.
I've met him out in L.A. or something like that.
Yeah, he's out there.
Yeah, he's a good dude.
He's a great guy.
Shout out Derek Brown.
If I ever get married, I want him to officiate.
Oh, okay.
He's such a romantic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he published you at
Yep.
first.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, it is.
How did he discover you?
I don't know. We had mutual friends, and he was trying to publish folks who were spoken word artists because
Right.
he knew that they were struggling to get published by other sort of publishers, and he felt that spoken word artists were writing some of the best poetry, but because they weren't used to being on the page, weren't getting published, and so
I
he
see.
reached out to me.
And did he help you get the line breaks and all that, or format it?
Yeah,
or
like
did
he
you-
he had a big hand in editing that whole first book. And I think I cried a lot, mostly because he kept trying to take out my rhymes. And I'm one of the only spoken word artists I know that still rhymes almost every line, but I know I'm not supposed to do it, so I try to hide it from the reader and the listener, and I do it it's this neurotic thing in my own head that I need to rhyme everything.
I like rhymes.
Yeah, me
What's wrong
too.
with rhymes?
Well, I like the idea of it's almost it's this rhythm that is I like the idea that even if you didn't speak English, you would feel the repetition of something and it might resonate in some rhythmic way to you.
Yeah. So you legit cried when he was taking away rhymes? Did
Oh my gosh, yes,
you actual tears?
they were my babies, the rhymes.
And how did he respond when
He
you were
didn't
crying?
see any. Oh no,
he
I didn't cry
see
to
it.
him. I cried sitting. I remember one day just sitting in my driveway crying. No, I didn't. I'm not gonna go crying to a boy. Never.
Never.
I only cry to girls.
That's probably good advice.
Yeah.
How old were you when that first book came out?
26 or something maybe.
And how old are you now?
Now I'm 44.
Wow.
Yeah.
So when did you come out? It was
Come out as queer?
yeah, in the timeline. I'm just was it in the middle of or were you already at 20 something out?
So, I think that I was, I looked like this when I was 9.
Yeah, you still look 26.
Yeah, I would look
Yeah.
like this. When I was 9, I had this haircut. I always
You
knew
clearly knew, yes.
Yeah, but I didn't, I was just, it was such a conservative place where I grew up, and it wasn't, I came out at 20 years old, though.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay, a
yeah.
long time ago.
A long time ago.
That's why it was a little harder with the folks and the
Yeah.
times.
Yeah, we were all, the time, it was a way, everything in the world was different then. It's not to say it's easy for folks to come out now, and you want things to change for the better, and a lot has. I think it's important to acknowledge that a lot has changed for the better. And also kids are still getting killed for coming out, so losing their families, it's hard.
Yeah, it is tough.
Yeah.
And your pronoun is they, right?
Yep.
They, them.
Yeah.
And how long has that been the case? Or how long long ago did you establish that?
Gosh, I don't know now. Maybe, wow, I have no idea. I think my inner circle, my close friends, started using they, them, theirs pronouns for me in maybe 2010,
Long time ago.
12. Yeah, like some 2011 maybe, and then
Yeah.
a couple years after that.
And what was that like when you established that within yourself? Like, was it very liberating, or what was the feeling like of that?
It was
Discovery?
really liberating. It felt wonderful to me to finally have people using something that I resonated with. That said, I've never, I have a lot of folks in my community who have very to mispronounce somebody is a really painful, excruciating experience for many, many people. I don't have that same feeling. Somebody can use she or he for me, and it will startle me, but it doesn't.
It doesn't offend you like crazy.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. But I don't think that's the case for most people. I think pronouns are very important to many people.
Right.
Yeah.
The awareness for them is I feel just in the last couple years has really come up to the front in society or in the media. In 2010, I don't think anyone would have been open to that even.
No, I had some writing heroes who were using Z and Zir back then, and I just thought, gosh, that's good. That's got to be so hard to get people to learn how to do that, and I felt for them because it was, so many folks were just failing at it all the time. And folks who didn't, wanted not to fail at it, but it's been some of the sweetest experiences on tour, with particularly like communicating with restaurant staff, and we try to make the restrooms at our shows gender neutral, and then just the learning experience for everybody has been mostly just so tender and kind. It's rare that we have issues at venues with people being jerks about it. But I know that's exceptional. I don't think that's everybody's experience.
Right, but probably in this domain, people are like really like concerned with treating you with respect. Yeah,
maybe. And it's also, I've heard, It's really sweet. Like sometimes they have a staff meeting before, or a security meeting for the merch lines and stuff, because the merch line afterwards mostly is just a kind of a meet and greet where people can be quite emotional, all of us just feeling and talking about hard things, and listening to the staff have their meetings about how they're going to handle the show. I've walked in a few times and just the kindest conversations about like people asking about the pronouns and the importance of staff not pronouncing anybody in the room, because you're not going to be able to identify somebody's pronoun ever by looking at them, and just walking in on those conversations that are new for people and hearing them maneuvering around it. It's been really sweet.
Do you go to the merch booth at the end of the show and meet the fans and all that? Do you ever get into a situation where somebody will mispronoun you, and do you correct them, or do you let it slide, or how do you deal with that?
I don't typically correct people on my pronouns unless we're going to be talking for a while,
Right, yeah.
If it's just, in a moment. But if it were a more painful topic for me, I think that I would. And I do sometimes, if I'm really connected to somebody I'm talking to and they keep saying she, and I sense that we're going to hang out more, I'll be like, hey, my pronouns are, yeah.
Have you had any interesting reactions to that, or mostly just like people are kind of hip and aware?
Most of the interesting reactions have actually come from like parents and
right.
Parents of my partner, or like
Boomers.
friends. Yeah. How they do it is
Hey, boomer.
It's sort of hilarious, of the question. So
Like what?
Okay, so Andrea, so you identify as many people at once. Is that, like questions like that?
Come on.
Yeah, no, but they're serious.
For real. That's somebody that's somebody who's like sneaking in a heckle. You identify as many people
No, it
as
really
one.
isn't. It's like, it's good-hearted. I'm telling you, because I know exactly who I'm thinking about right now.
Right,
She's the
it's
kindest
good-hearted.
person. Yeah,
Okay.
she's just the kindest mom in the world.
So what did you say? What was your response to
I'm
that?
like, no.
No.
That's not what it means. Yeah. But it's
Right.
really easy if you think about it. So if I said to you, and my partner uses this all the time to try to explain. So if I said, my cousin got into a great school, and what might you say if I said my cousin got into a great college? You'd say, where are they going?
Oh yeah, where are they going?
So it's really easy. It's just like we actually know how to talk like that. We just don't know we know how to talk like that.
That's funny.
It takes a little
That's
switch.
cool.
You
Yeah, it
have to
does.
think about it,
Yeah.
but
How do you seek out inspiration to keep going? How many books have you published so far? Like 10, something like that?
No, not
No?
10. 7 or so.
And so where do you go for new inspiration? Or do you have any issues with that, or is it just flowing all the time?
I don't ever go any place for inspiration.
I mean, inside too. Like it doesn't have to be externally going someplace.
I think it's just paying attention. It's never been something I've had to search for. If anything, I wish less would come, because I have this overwhelming feeling of not having enough time to make everything I want to make.
I see.
Yeah.
So there's no kind of practices that you do to like facilitate it. It just comes all the time, no matter what you're doing.
Yeah, there are some things, lately, because I've been doing this for so long, I'm trying to do new things. I'm trying to do more things that scare me. So one of the things about the current show that we're doing is I wrote, I've never written song lyrics before.
Mm-hmm.
And so all the songs in the show I wrote the lyrics for, and that's a new thing for me. And I'm also working on writing a memoir, which I've always felt terrible at writing prose, and so I'm trying to do more things that I might be terrible at.
That's good.
Yeah.
How about melodies within the spoken word? Like, have you ever thought about incorporating melodies?
Like, what do you mean by melodies?
Like melody, like singing.
I don't sing, but yeah, so the musician that I'm collaborating with on this, I shouldn't say I don't sing. I sing all the time.
Singing is sustained talking.
Yeah,
It's
I
not
sing
that
all
big of
the
a
time.
deal.
Yeah, I sing all the time.
It's like,
But working with Lara Ruggles, the musician who's working with me at this show, it's funny. She'd just come to my house, and I would just sing them to her, and she would sing them back to me more beautiful. And then,
right.
we do it together.
So you're writing songs now.
Trying to, yeah.
You separate poems from songs?
In this show, yeah. So this whole show is, I mean, for lack of a better word, like soundscape. She's playing the entire show, and it's 90 minutes long. And then
Keyboards or what?
Yep, and then also computer, stuff, layers. She's her whole band, kind of your sort of thing.
Right.
And then I talk. That's all I do is talk. I talk, and then she'll come into a chorus, and which is neat. I've never done that before, and she'll sing a chorus, and then we'll go into the poem.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Are you starting to read memoirs now that you're writing one? Are you studying the craft of that, or is it just something that you're going for?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the last memoir I read. I've actually been reading a lot of novels lately. I've read a bunch of memoirs in the process.
Yeah. What's that one, Art of Memoir? Have you ever read that?
No, but my partner actually bought it for me to read so I could write better.
Yeah.
I haven't done it
Club. That's I can't remember her name.
The Liars
Somebody
Club.
recommended that, yeah. Because Joe started writing a memoir and stopped.
Yeah.
Why'd you stop?
I don't know. It's just it's heavy.
Yeah.
It's a heavy weight to handle. I was going through a lot of trauma and dealing with that through the process of writing, and then I just kind of abandoned it for a while. I mean, not forever, but just for a while.
I find it to be the most intimidating thing I've ever done, because in a poem, there are places you can, if something's vulnerable to say, you could sort of hide a little in the metaphor of it.
Right.
And there's no place to hide in a memoir. And you can feel when you're not being brave, and then you want to quit when you're not being brave,
Right.
And so it's this tricky thing. I keep starting and stopping as well.
What about, and like feeling like you're betraying somebody's secrets or
Totally.
stuff like that kind of shit?
Yeah, that's really hard. That's actually been the hardest part for me, which is also its own thing with spoken word. I'm like, whose stories do I have permission to tell? Even if, I'm the other person in the story, it's hard to figure out how to take care of people. So for me, I just like keep running things by people. How do you feel about this? But it does limit the honesty sometimes, because if somebody says, I don't want you to say that. So yeah.
How often has that happened?
It's happened a few times, and I've had to remove stuff. And I've also been on the other side of it, where my partner has written pieces, and I'm like, I'm actually not comfortable with that
Oh,
thing.
really?
Yeah. So, yeah.
So there's not like a kind of like, no matter what, the art wins. Sometimes you like make sacrifices.
I know for a lot of people, no matter what wins is the rule, but it's not for me. For example, I wrote a lot in the last couple of years about my sister's experience with heroin addiction, and throughout that I got her permission on everything, and our sort of family experience around that. But I know folks that may have not asked for permission, so it's tricky, because also there are other things that are what is the quote? It's if people didn't want you to write about them, they should have
acted better.
Yeah. So
I don't like that quote.
you don't like it?
I don't love it.
I don't love it either.
I don't know why. It's not even that I disagree with it. It's just I don't like it. I don't like the premise of it.
I have a hard time with it as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's just too, like, it's just shitty. Like, you should have acted better. Like, I hate that.
I think it also
like,
suggests that the person writing is themselves a saint. And,
right. Well, that's the problem that's the problem with a lot of things, I find. Is that, especially, like, dealing with, like, narcissistic personality disorder individuals and stuff like that, and people that are somewhat toxic in your life, and being victimized in ways, but then understanding, like, and coming to terms with that for your own self-preservation.
Yeah.
And calling it out for your own self-preservation, but then calling it out from this place of, you're just a human with fuck ups and foibles too. Like, so
Right.
it does, like, when you call things like that out, it does sort of somewhat elevate you into this place of I'm a saint.
Yeah.
Which none of us are.
Yeah, no, we
I
aren't. Yeah, you are.
Yeah.
No. So I think that, I like their way of talking about it, because I don't think of people that way. I think it's boring to look at the world that way, that there are good people and bad people is the shittiest thing idea of anything,
Right.
you know?
Yeah, we're all on a continuum, I think.
Yeah.
Well, most of us.
Yeah, and
There
I
are
think
some shitballs out there.
there really,
like-
yeah, there are. There are. I mean, and I think that that's mostly folks not being interested in their own learning, you know. And I think at some point, hopefully, it gets exciting to see your own ugliness, you know, because it's just seeing what is, and then things become more able to be transformed. You got to look at
it's the
something to change it.
Jungian acceptance of the shadow.
Wait, tell me about that. I don't know.
Well, you know Carl Jung.
Yeah.
Yeah, like he talks often about embracing your shadow, or
your
coming to
dark-
terms with your shadow.
Yeah.
Not being in denial of the dark aspects of
Yeah.
your humanity.
Right. And I think that
The importance of that.
yeah. And I think that having a larger cultural conversation around that is so important, especially during this time where it's a more for lack of a better word, call out culture. Which is necessary in lots of ways,
Right.
naming the harm being done, and then also creating space within that to. For me, it's important to believe in people's capacity to change. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, Joaquin's Phoenix's speech
Yeah.
at the Oscars kind of spoke to that.
Yeah, I love somebody getting up there and saying, I've been a scoundrel. And shouldn't we all do that in our lives at some point, you know? Like,
Right.
I don't know anybody who couldn't honestly say that about themselves at some point.
Right.
Yeah.
That's true. That's
And
interesting.
it's, what was the first time you felt validated with doing like the spoken word and the poetry? I know you won a bunch of Grand Slam. What are the titles?
Yeah, slams.
Poetry slams. Was that your first validation, or a lot before that you felt like this is what I'm supposed to do?
You know, I think the most validating thing for me was being able to do it, because it terrified me so much. So even now, even if the show, if it sucks, if I could tell people are reluctant to clap the whole time, the fact of being up there so terrified was its own sort of
win.
validation. Yeah, it felt that way. I still feel that it's a success to do this thing that scares me. Validating. I can't think of it really.
Do you have shows like that are that are
No.
audiences stiff and not applauding, or do you usually get a lot of acceptance?
Mostly acceptance.
Yeah.
Yeah. But some shows are harder, and that's usually on. It's usually on me. There's something going on where I just can't get into myself. It's almost like spoken word is awful if it's not honest and authentic. And if there is a night that I can't reach that in myself, then that feels, that's harder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Michael Stipe said one time that he doesn't have to always feel it every night to the extreme. I think of that a lot when I'm performing. Like sometimes it is hard to reach it emotionally, and then I wonder if it still can translate emotionally to the observer. What do you think?
I think that people know. I think that people can feel it, and maybe more so with spoken word than songs, because songs just feel like But there's something about just a conversation. If you're talking to somebody, you can feel if they're not being honest or there with you. You can feel that lack of presence. There's something about music that lives in a different part of us. It's almost ancient, and so even if there's something, it's just coming from so many worlds below that it I don't know. I think it has more of a chance of resonating if the musician isn't feeling it as much.
Right. Yeah. Maybe that's true.
maybe.
Have you ever had any issues with addiction or drugs or anything like that?
Oh, wow, that's fascinating that you asked that. I've actually never spoken about this publicly, but yeah, I had a tour.
Well, I brought it up because of your sister.
Yeah.
You mentioned her
Yeah.
issues with that.
Yeah, so a few years ago, I had a tour where I was on stage for 5 months, and I had 4 days off in 5 months because I released an album, and then my book they put out at the same time. So I had to fill almost every single day. And on that tour, my anxiety went to such an extreme level that I got addicted to benzos. Yeah, and it was awful. It was so terrible, and the process of coming off of it was just horrific. I couldn't believe it. And it was a mess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you seek out like 12-step or anything like that? Or
No, I knew it was a situational thing for me. It's not something. It was just like I was literally trying to get through that, that time, and it just got out of hand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. I'm glad you got out of it.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
But so do you ever use any kind of psychedelics or anything like that? Any kind of things like that help you write? Weed?
No, I can only sleep. I can only sleep when I smoke weed. If ever I try to smoke weed in the daytime, somebody's going to take me to the ER. It's awful. No, and as far as psychedelics, I don't. In my younger years, I would take LSD and mushrooms, and I had a great expansive time with it. And this, where I'm at this point in my life, and I have friends trying to talk me into ayahuasca, but I'm also I'm scared about where that will go. I'm interested in what they're doing with MDMA trials around trauma, and they're doing lots of trials in, I think they have permission to do it where I live in Colorado, and folks are having a ton of positive experiences with that, and also ketamine trials. I'm interested in both of those
depression.
Things. Yeah, I'm interested in that for my ultimate, the betterment of my mental health. But the other stuff right now, I feel like I need to get my nervous system back to a little bit more solid of a place before I dive into anything that's more psychedelic.
What do you mean solid of a place?
I'm afraid that I'm so freshly out of the freak out panic attack times that I'm afraid of having a massive panic attack on LSD or something.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what advice would you give to like young creative people that are seeking to make a career in spoken word or in some kind of artistic pursuit?
I would say take in as much of the art that you love as you can, and also take in a lot of art that you don't like, and get good at being able to communicate to yourself why you don't like it. That's been something that I've it's helped me to take in art that I don't necessarily like, poems, songs, and just try to feel into why I don't like it. And to
learn how to avoid those things?
Or not even that, because sometimes it's great art that I'm not liking, and getting to know that part of myself. But yeah, take in art and then write, create, and be willing to fail. I think one of the things that's happening for folks, it's definitely happening in the spoken word community, is folks are scared to put themselves out there because they're afraid of feedback. Because there's so much feedback these days.
And there's so much backlash too if you say anything out of line.
Yep. And some of that's good that feedback is happening, but you have to go into it knowing that that's how the world is now, and be able to show up to it with tenderness towards yourself and also the folks giving the feedback, even if the feedback isn't coming to you kindly.
Have you ever had an experience of writing something that you thought could be offensive and edited it out or kept it in, or how did that debate go within yourself?
All of that. Yeah, I've written things that little red flags were going up in me, and I didn't listen to the red flags, and then later would get the feedback, or later just be like, no, I shouldn't have done that. I've written from a place of anger and wrote something or put something out that later I was like, that doesn't actually resonate with what I want to be doing in the world. And then I've also gotten lots of feedback from, the outer world about things I wrote being harmful, whether they're classist, racist, ableist, homophobic, all of it. I've done all of those, made all of those mistakes.
Interesting. Mostly when I have a red flag moment and go for it anyway, usually people give me the feedback of I'm glad I like that part. Like,
yeah, I've gotten
the
both.
Vulnerability of it.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with Brene Brown?
Oh yeah.
You like
for
her
sure.
stuff? Like
yeah,
the power of vulnerability.
Yeah, I love her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're getting the high sign.
Okay.
We're getting the wrap it up sign.
Yeah.
So thank you for doing this.
Yeah, thank you so much,
Yeah.
y'all. Thanks for being willing with all the folks in the background talking.
Listen, we had to do it.
First time with that much background noise, so we apologize for that.
We apologize to our listeners and want to thank you for your time and hope the tour goes great.
Thank you so much. Thanks to both of you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Hi, this is Joseph Arthur. Thanks for checking out Come to Where I'm From. Please support us on Patreon, patreon.com/come to where I'm from. We are an independent podcast, and any contributions you can make are greatly appreciated.